It is October 1917, and you are standing in a tent somewhere in the mud-choked landscape of the Western Front. The air is thick, not just with the damp, clinging chill of a French autumn, but with a cocktail of smells that will never leave your nostrils. The sharp, cloying sweetness of ether, the metallic tang of fresh blood, the pervasive, earthy rot of churned-up soil, and the underlying, sickly sweet stench of gangrene. You are a surgeon, but the white coat you wore in the lecture halls of London or New York is a distant memory. Here, your apron is stiff with dried fluids, and your hands are perpetually chapped, raw from scrubbing in cold water that never quite gets the grime out from under your fingernails. You are not here to heal in the way you were taught. You are here to manage the wreckage of industrial warfare. Think back to your medical school days. You spent years learning the delicate anatomy of the human body, the precise, measured steps of a clean appendectomy, the quiet dignity of a hospital ward where patients rested in crisp, white sheets. You were trained to believe that medicine was a noble, deliberate pursuit, a slow, careful process of diagnosis and cure. You expected to be a healer, a man of science who could stand over a patient and methodically restore them to health. But that illusion shattered the moment you arrived at the front. The reality of 1917 is not a hospital. It is a factory of trauma. You are working in a casualty clearing station, a place that is less a sanctuary and more a high-speed assembly line for the broken. The triage process is your new religion. When the ambulances arrive, they don't bring patients, they bring cargo. You have seconds to look at a man, assess his wounds, and make a decision that will haunt you for the rest of your life. You are sorting them into categories: those who can be saved with immediate intervention, those who can wait for transport to the rear, and those for whom there is nothing left to do but provide a measure of comfort until the end. It is a brutal, mechanical calculation. You are not treating individuals, you are processing a flow of humanity that never stops. The sheer scale of the need is overwhelming. The United States Medical Department in 1917 had only enough staff for 7 field hospitals, yet they were expected to support an army that would eventually swell to 3 million men. You are a drop in an ocean of carnage, and the system is designed to keep you moving, not to keep you thinking. The operating table itself is a testament to the improvisation required of you. It is often nothing more than a door, unhinged from a ruined farmhouse and propped up on wooden crates. It is uneven, stained, and cold. You work by the flickering, unreliable light of a kerosene lamp, your shadow dancing against the canvas walls of the tent. There is no time for the sterile precision of a modern operating theater. You are working in the dark, in the cold, with the constant, low-frequency thrum of artillery, in the distance, a sound that vibrates through the floorboards and rattles your instruments. You learn to ignore the shaking. You learn to ignore the screams from the next tent. You just keep your hands moving. Your tools are not the gleaming, specialized instruments you once imagined. They are heavy, utilitarian, and often blunt. You are using bone saws that look like they belong in a butcher shop, forceps that have been boiled until the metal is pitted, and scalpels that you sharpen yourself on a whetstone between cases. You are not performing delicate surgery. You are performing damage control. You are cleaning out wounds filled with mud, shrapnel, and bits of uniform. You are tying off arteries that have been shredded by high-explosive shells. You are amputating limbs that have been pulverized beyond recognition. It is a visceral, physical labor. By the end of a 12-hour shift, your back is screaming, your eyes are burning, and your arms feel like lead. You're not a surgeon in the traditional sense. You are a mechanic working on a machine that has been smashed by a sledgehammer. The sheer grinding repetition of the work is something that rarely makes it into the history books. You see the same wounds, the same patterns of shrapnel entry, the same desperate, wide-eyed stares of boys who are barely old enough to shave. You become an expert in the geometry of trauma. You know exactly where to cut to find the artery, exactly how much pressure to apply to stop the bleeding, exactly how to stitch a jagged tear so it might hold together for the long, bumpy ride to the base hospital. It is a grim, specialized knowledge that you never asked for, but that you now possess in abundance. You are a master of a craft that should not exist. And then there is the weight of the things you cannot do. You are constantly haunted by the patients you had to leave behind, the ones who were too far gone, the ones who needed a level of care that simply wasn't available in a tent in the middle of a war zone. You carry their faces with you. You see them when you close your eyes. You wonder if you could have done more, if you had been faster, if you had been better. But you know deep down that the system was the bottleneck, Not your skill. You were working with the tools you had in the conditions you were given against an enemy that was designed to destroy, not to wound. When the shift finally ends, the silence is the hardest part. You step out of the tent into the night air, and the sudden absence of the frantic, high-pitched activity of the station is deafening. You sit on a crate, light a cigarette, and try to wash the smell of the day off your skin. You write letters home, but you find you cannot tell the truth. How do you explain to your family that you spent the day deciding who would live and who would die based on the severity of their wounds? How do you describe the sound of a man begging for water when you know he won't survive the night? You don't. You write about the weather, or the food, or the books you're reading. You keep the reality of the front locked away in a box in your mind, a box you only open when you are alone in the dark. Now, here's what I want you to sit with. The entire framing of your role has shifted. You are not a doctor in the way you were trained to be, you are a mechanic. You are working on a production line where the product is human life, and the goal is not to fix the machine, but to keep it running long enough to get it off the line. The field hospitals of 1917 were never intended to be hospitals in the sense we understand today. They were magnified dressing stations, mobile and small, designed to stabilize, to patch, and to push forward. They were never meant to perform the complex, life-saving surgeries that would define the later years of the war. You are a cog in a machine that is trying to manage a level of destruction that the human mind was never meant to process. You are not curing, you are sorting, you are not healing. You are managing the inevitable. When you look back at that scene, the mud, the ether, the makeshift table, you realize that the heroism wasn't in the surgery itself. It wasn't in the skill of your hands or the brilliance of your medical knowledge. The heroism was in the endurance. It was in the ability to show up, day after day, to that same cold, dark tent, and to keep working when every fiber of your being wanted to walk away. It was in the quiet, desperate struggle to maintain a shred of humanity in a world that had completely abandoned it. Does the medicine you experience today, with its sterile rooms, its advanced technology, and its focus on the individual patient, ever feel like it has lost touch with this kind of raw, fundamental reality? Or is it perhaps a blessing that we have moved so far from the mud and the ether of 1917? Think about the last time you were in a hospital. Think about the quiet, the order, the sense of purpose. It is a world away from that tent in France, and yet the core of the work, the attempt to save a life in the face of overwhelming odds, remains the same. We have just built a better, more humane machine to do it. You are standing in that same tent, but now you see it for what it truly was, a crucible of survival. And you have to wonder, if you were placed in that same position, with the same tools and the same impossible choices, would you have the strength to keep your hands steady, or would you finally break? That is the question that remains long after the guns have fallen silent.